All right, well, welcome to Tim's Take, and today we have a wonderful guest who's a repeat, Rusty Lee.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, and you're a extension specialist at station Montgomery County, Warren County, and
I'm a field specialist in agronomy. I'm based in Montgomery City, and I cover about 10 counties in the east central and northeast region of the state.
Right in the middle of both grain and forage production.
Exactly. So I get to work with producers just as concerned about their pasture forage as they are with their soybean diseases. So you bet.
And that's what we're going to talk about. You have really championed this Grazing Milo, and we're going to use Milo, grain, sorghum back and forth today because it's
kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. But Grazing Milo now. Why in the world would somebody want to do this?
So Grazing Milo is something that I've done for several years on my own farm, and I've learned it from neighbors, and it all came about due to the cost of winter feed. So the biggest expense for a cow-calf producer is winter cow feed. Stored forages are just expensive. That's our single largest expense.
Stored for me making hay or silage in the summer.
Yeah, so feeding cattle outside of the normal growing season, so that winter feed. Mm-hmm. That's our single biggest expense with cow calf.
So you're kind of promoting that we could do almost a year-round grazing, possibly, or mostly year-round.
So the way we utilize the Milo is animal removal, animal grazing of it, so we don't have to combine, right? We save that expense. So the cattle are grazing through the winter, but this is a component to. You can graze 365, maybe as with a lot of things, zero is an expensive number. So if you want to graze 100% of the time and have zero downtime, that might be a little much. But I have done it. Other producers have grazed all winter long, but it's nice to have a little bit of hay on hand, But Milo will certainly decrease the amount of hay.
Well, and like this summer, we went from a very dry summer, so hay production wasn't there like we really like. And most of our hay production, whether we like it or not, are cool season grasses.
Right, so that's predominantly what we see, the orchard grass, the tall fescue, the cool season grasses.
And they got hammered this year.
We
had a hot, dry summer.
Yeah, I did some forage reduction analysis for several counties in the state, and 50-60% reduction. So we were at 40 to 50% of normal forage yields this previous year.
But grain sorghum or Milo is a warm season annual crop, fairly drought tolerant. So this fits really well in Missouri with our unusual weathers from year to year.
It does. Grain sorghum, Milo, has a very fibrous root system. It's considered to be drought tolerant. You can have good productive soil, good enough for growing corn, but if your moisture is a little questionable, you'll find that producers will switch from corn to Milo. So as we move south and west in the U.S., we start seeing more Milo and less corn, and that's just due to the rainfall. Missouri ranks number 7 in the state on Milo production. Did you realize that? We're number 7 U.S.-wide in Milo production.
With Texas probably being number 1.
Right. So
it's a country of its own now.
You get in that arid Southwest, and they pretty well. Milo is their prime driver there, but for us it's a good fit. It's a good way to hedge. If you have good rains, you're going to have fantastic Milo yield, and if it's a kind of a droughty year, you're still going to get some grain yield.
I think this year we were 85% of what we had the year before on grain yield,
right?
And we got hit hard. We got hammered hard, but. Probably Missouri's if it's 7th in acres, we're probably number 1 in yield per acre.
Have to look at that. Yeah, I mean, Milo yield, we have enjoyed a year-over-year increase in average Milo yield, just like corn, just like beans. Every year since back in the 50s, corn yield just creeps up a little each year, and Milo has done the same thing. So there's been plenty of sorghum improvement dollars spent. So there's some decent grain yields in Milo.
Well, and you've got a new extension publication out.
I'm proud of this.
Right. It's hot off the press.
Absolutely. So we have an MU guide sheet, G2079, and it's titled Strip Grazing Milo as a Low-Cost Winter Forage. So we've made a few YouTube videos and have made presentations at producer meetings and talked about this subject through PowerPoints, and it's generated a lot of interest. Every year I add a few more producers to the list of folks that utilize this, and so the questions just repeat for new people, the how-tos and the why-tos, and so we've got a little 4-page guide sheet that outlines some of the expected cost and benefits to doing this. It's a really good read to help a producer think about it, because if you want to look at this coming winter, being able to graze Milo, the time is now to be thinking about seed purchases and getting planted. It's Milo planting season right now.
Right, because you told me before we aired that we always think June 1st as being the Milo planting time. It'd be more of a warm season crop, but you just showed me some data that after May 15th, yields start going down in South Missouri.
Yep. So you look at southern Missouri, and the optimum planting time is April 15th through May 15th. So regardless of where you are, Milo, just think soil temperature. So that 2-inch depth, think 65-degree soil temperature. Once you get there, it's time to plant Milo. About
like soybeans, what we used to think soybeans were.
Right.
We've kind of changed on that, haven't we?
Everything we thought we knew is backwards now. We're planting beans before corn, and et cetera. But seedling diseases, it doesn't matter what the plant is, I think, but the best way we can set our crop up for success is to put seed in the ground at that optimum temperature that it can germinate quickly and emerge and get to growing. And for Milo, that's a 65-degree temp. We can pop that kernel out of the ground and get it growing.
Well, two things that just jumped out at me on your publication, we talked about economics, was seed cost at $10.80 per acre.
How about that?
Compared to what corn would be $108 an acre?
Yeah.
I mean, really. And fertilizer at $90, almost $91 an acre. That's half a corn.
Right.
So your expenses are much less in grain sorghum than they are in corn.
They are, nitrogen being one of the biggest expenses. It's all about the yield potential that you have, but I would use 120 units of nitrogen as my minimum, and I really don't see a need to go beyond 140, 150. So with our corn, a lot of fields we're putting 200 plus units of nitrogen down, but we're pushing for that 200 corn yield. With Milo, 100. I do a lot of my cow days per acre. My carrying capacity formula is based on 120 bushel Milo. Most years that's not that difficult to achieve. We'll get moisture, so we try to fertilize for that 120 bushel yield.
Now, when you're going to graze your Milo, you want to raise it just like a grain crop.
Correct. So we're grazing Milo, but just don't use the word forage with sorghum. In this situation, we're not growing a forage sorghum. We're growing a grain sorghum. And so the carrying capacity is the energy, and the energy is the grain. So there's a direct relationship. If your grain yield is half, your cow days per acre is half. Okay, so 120 bushel Milo, we can get 400 cow days to the acre out of it.
400 cow days an acre?
Isn't that fantastic? There's not much you can do on an acre that'll generate 400 cow days, but it's all about the energy. When we take we notice the parts of the plant that the cow consumes. They'll consume the grain head, they consume the fodder leaves, and the top half of the stalk. And when we take those parts of the plant and combine it into a composite forage sample. So grain mixed with stalk, mixed with fodder leaves, and test that. We get TDN values above 70. It's normal to get a 74, 75 TDN, which is just a very digestible, lot of energy. The net energy maintenance is around 0.84, something like that. So protein will be a little deficient. Protein will run about 7%, but between the two, energy and protein is the cheaper to supplement. Okay, energy is where you spend a lot of money getting cattle through the winter.
So a typical cool season grass bale of hay, what kind of numbers are we talking about there?
Everything. It depends on when you cut your hay, right? That's the biggest thing. Right. So the old joke is for physiological maturity with our cool season grasses, the best time period normally to cut hay is May.
Yeah.
Of the 12 months out of the year, what month has the most rainfall for us? It's May.
Right.
So the month that's the best for stage of growth of grass for hay cutting is also the most difficult month to get hay dried. So we'll see a lot of June hay. And then, you hate to say it, but we do see fescue with seed heads in it and people making hay. At that point, you're making straw, I mean, so the digestibility is much lower. If you take orchard grass or fescue early and cut it properly at proper maturity, you can have some high protein and high TDN hay. But if you look at forage tests of hay, typically you'll see TDN values for fescue in the 50s. That's pretty normal, and that's that's pretty low. That requires supplementation. So you'll see people feeding hay and shell corn, that kind of thing.
So you've got a fairly good product already then with your grain sorghum grazing.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes things just work out. Blind hogs find acorns every so often, and this Grazing Milo, it's not because the producers, that showed me are these geniuses. It's because they try things, they experiment, they get outside the box, and they go, why not? And so it turns out there are many attributes about Milo that just makes it fit so well with cattle grazing.
Now you mentioned cattle. How about small ruminants, sheep, goats? Would they also?
We have producers that run some goats and sheep on standing Milo. It does work for them. It depends on your flock. I've seen flocks that were finicky and they resisted consuming the Milo grain, and then I've seen sheep flocks that went over it just like cattle do. Cattle even have to learn. Cattle that have never grazed Milo before, it takes them a few days to sort of figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And but after that, they remember from one year to the next. And as long as one cow remembers what to do, the rest of them learn real fast.
Would they go after the grain first, or do they go with the leaves, or both? Or
so they do the grain first. In fact, we use that to help determine if we allocated a big enough area, because see, we have to give cattle a defined area every day. So the allocation is never more than one day's nutritional needs. Otherwise, trampling, there's just the loss of it. So when you give the correct area, you'll find that the grain heads all disappear in about 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes. And then it takes them about 2 hours to consume the fodder and the stalks and what all that they're going to take. But nope, they'll go around and harvest the grain heads first.
That's amazing. So what's the field look like after a winter of grazing?
You can go into a field, it looks like a checkerboard in the spring, and I can tell you what the actual weather was every day through the winter. When it's warm and wet, the cattle pug, their hoof action breaks the ground up. When it's frozen and solid, it looks just like a great no-till field ready to go in for spring planting. So there are some issues where we're doing this in crop fields, So it's not that difficult to apply some tillage to smooth things out from the hoof traffic. That's not really, I haven't noticed any issues from that. It's more aesthetics than it is anything.
And you're talking about a light tillage. You're not talking about a
one pass with a disc or a turbo till, and you're ready to plant beans or whatever your subsequent crop is.
Sure. Another thing you mentioned, the nutrients the P and the K that you use on your grain sorghum.
Yep.
Most of it stays back in the field when they're grazing.
We joke about people buying hay, and you can buy hay a lot of times for not much more money than the value of the nutrients in that bale of hay, the phosphorus and the potassium.
It's about $30 a bale, isn't it?
It is $25 to $30 a bale, depending on fertilizer prices. So there's a lot of value. So when you're making hay and selling off your farm, you're exporting those nutrients off your farm. Yeah. Well, the same with grain. When we harvest a bushel of soybeans, corn, milo, and put it on a truck and send it to town, we're exporting nutrients off of our farm. The removal rate is what that's called. Milo has a removal rate of about 0.4 of a pound of phosphorus per bushel. 120 bushel Milo, and you're exporting 50 pounds of phosphorus per acre. And then if you look at potassium, has a little lower removal rate. 120 bushel crop is about 30 pounds. So there's 80 pounds of P and K per acre gone. And, depending on fertilizer prices, that can work out somewhere around $40.
Right.
So when we graze that nutrient never left our farm. Now, it may be relocated. It's going into manure. So maybe it goes back on some pasture, because it's common when we graze milo, like I said, they'll be there for about 2 hours. And then they go back to some pasture area, maybe go do some stockpile fescue grazing, what have you. And so the manure gets deposited where it hits. But
it's still staying on your farm.
It's on your farm.
So you're talking about you have your grain sorghum and adjacent to your pasture. So you have them doing both.
That seems to work best. We know that we have to supplement protein. And on average, from forage analysis, we find that a beef cow, a fall calving lactating beef cow, is going to be about 0.5 pound of protein a day deficient. You got to come up with some way to put 0.5 pound of protein in her. Protein doesn't have to be fed daily. It can be fed twice a week. And so, for example, 2 pounds of distiller's grain will give us that needed 3 days worth of protein supplementation. If you have some good stockpile grass, you can go pick up your protein from that. Some producers feed a very high quality hay in limited amounts. You were using hay as a supplement as opposed to just true room and fill. So cattle having a place to go back to pasture, you got to have access to water, of course, and to go back and graze some stockpile, you'll find that this milo grazing gets used in concert with some pasture area.
So, but what if I have just stockers? Can I just leave them on the milo and go?
So this is an area that I want to evaluate further. So one of the bigger challenges to putting stockers on milo is that the daily allocation requires the use of electric fence. Because we got to move this wire every day. And if you're raising your own calves and then to background, then okay, they're already broke to an electric fence. But if you're going and buying a potload of stockers and turning loose, I've seen barbed wire fence not stop, fresh stockers. So I'd hate to put them out there and expect one wire of poly to hold them back. Producers that have raised their own calves, I've seen them take weaned calves, put them in the milo, let them graze milo through most of the winter. When the milo's gone, they are conditioned and ready to move right into the feedlot. So if they're doing on-farm feeding, they take 5-weight weaned calves, put them in the milo, turn them into 7-weight calves, and walk them into the feedlot. Kind of a daily gains in that 3+ pound range.
Now, when I was a kid, we had stockers on cornfields.
Okay.
After we harvested the corn, They have some wheat planted in there, maybe some cereal rye, and they were on that. How's that compared to what we're talking about?
Well, grazing stalks is a fantastic way to stretch forages and to get cattle through the winter.
But we're probably losing what we probably could not keep their protein up.
Right, and the energy as well, because the corn's gone. But so the corn's gone, but so are all the fences, Tim.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's getting harder and harder to move into corn stalks for grazing. And then the other piece we have to watch out for, this is becoming more and more, read your label on your herbicides. There are some herbicides that we can use in corn production that prohibit grazing stalks after corn harvest. So we got to be careful about that, because we're planting cover crops in the corn stalk, corn fields, and we want to go out and graze it, and that's a wonderful thing. But producers, we really have to pay attention to the herbicides we're using, because some do explicitly prohibit the grazing of the fodder or the stubble after grain harvest.
A lot of corn and grain sorghum herbicides are the same. Are we okay on the grain sorghum side?
Well, so on the Milo, we're so far so good. A common herbicide mix would be some atrazine and some metolachlor. Right. So we'd use either some 2,4-D and glyphosate for a burn down prior to planting, and then we do an atrazine dual metolachlor application before emergence, and we're good.
It's when we get some of those broadleaf herbicides,
right?
That's when we start getting in some issues.
And some of the newer chemistries.
Yes.
So going back to some old chemistry of atrazine and metolachlor, I'm not aware of an issue there, but it's when we get into some of the newer options, right, that we're starting to see those chemistries have restrictions.
Which you don't put those on grain sorghum, because they ding the grain sorghum also.
They can.
They can't. Yeah, it's close to corn, but they're not the same. They are still different. All right. Well, Rusty, let's talk about grain sorghum production. We're going to start that here now. So what's some things that we need to do?
Well, we know that for planting dates for central Missouri, for us, is we're there. Yeah. We're looking for 65-degree soil temperature.
At 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well, okay.
Is that the rule of thumb?
I don't really have that defined. You hear about 2-inch soil temperature. I think of a average, but it dips a little lower at night and peaks out during 1 or 2 o'clock. So you go with 8 a.m. Is that when you look at it?
That's what I like to look at.
Okay, I can go with that. Sounds good. But the trick is we want that Milo seed to have a quick germination and get as much of that pure live seed we put in the ground to pop up as possible. So that puts us somewhere April. From mid-April to mid-May is a pretty good window for planting. I like to think about Milo planting in the month of May for central Missouri. Seeding rates, if on dry land, 60,000 is not a bad number. And Milo's interesting, and it confuses some people. If you plant Milo early enough, okay, you can reduce your seeding rate. Because it will tiller. Mm-hmm. Milo tillering is impacted by nighttime temperatures at a certain stage of growth. So it takes cool night temperatures once we have a plant up and growing, and then you'll see tiller take place. If we plant late enough, we do these June plantings. By the time that plant is able to decide about tillering, the nighttime temperatures are too warm to foster tiller development. And so you're planting in June, you want to up your seeding rate because you're going to miss the tiller.
That's why where I grew up, great Milo was always what we planted almost last. Uh-huh. It was always that in the May, 1st of June, down in Missouri Boot Hill, and our seeding rates were 120 to 150,000.
Right. And so were you irrigated? Because you'll find... No. Irrigated Milo, it's thought that you'll benefit from a higher seeding rate than dry land. If you plant later, a higher seeding rate. So absolutely. And we have producers that have success after wheat. So when you're doing after wheat Milo, you're not going to be getting tillering.
No.
So you're going to need a higher seeding rate.
So if I'm planting this Milo to graze, do I want lots of find that do I want the tiller a lot, or do I want more main stalks then?
So when we're grazing Milo, it's the same as combining for grain to sell bushels. We're trying to produce grain. That's the secret. The carrying capacity is the grain. So you perform management to optimize grain production, period. And if you can, I think we see higher grain yields with a full season planting, full growth season. If we do a double crop Milo or we do a later planted Milo, you'll see reduced yields, and that just takes away cow days.
Okay, so I want to get that population to give me. So tillaring's all right.
Yeah, tillaring's beneficial. We'll put on more heads. That's right.
And maybe even thinner stalks. Maybe could be a bit more digestible. We got to look at that some more. We got to look at that. That's something good. That's something good to look at.
Right. And if you're used to, I enjoy Milo on 30-inch rows.
Okay.
I like the way it grows on 30-inch rows. That also facilitates the putting up a fence. We can take a 4-wheeler and drive down a couple of rows, and you got a nice open spot to put your poly wire up. Milo, if you plant Milo too thick, because you can grow Milo with a grain drill, you can do 7.5-inch rows. But if you're not careful, you'll get the population so high that you create more of a forage crop than you do a grain crop. 15-inch Milo works really well for a lot of producers. 20-inch Milo, 30 really does good. So I see no reason to not plant 30-inch rows. I have producers in parts of the state that are predominantly cattle, and they don't have a lot of corn production, and so they're faced with using the no-till drill from the Soil and Water Office, and that works. I encourage producers to use those drills. Maybe let's block off every other hole, and we can turn that drill into a 15-inch spacing instead of 7.5. But that works. If you're new to planting Milo, using a corn planter, you get the Milo, cups or plates going. But just remember, we don't want to plant it as deep as corn. Milo seed needs to be 1/2-inch minimum to 1-inch maximum. So somewhere in that 1/2 to 1-inch depth is all you want to do. 3/4 is really good. With corn, we have a minimum depth of 1.5 for the root development. But Milo, 1.5 would be too deep. So, and
you can no-till it like bean stubble.
Absolutely,
that's no problem.
Yeah, no reason to not no-till. You bet. After that, you did your soil test. You took your sample to your extension office, and you had your soil test done ahead of time, right? So your P and K needs. So we're going to put on the P and K to recommendations. It's going to be not that much reduced than a like a 0.60/80 typical rate of P and K for a corn crop. There'll be something similar for this Milo. But we will find that the nitrogen needs are a little less. I like a minimum 120 units of nitrogen on a Milo field, but I don't really see a need to go past maybe 150. So somewhere in there, that will be plenty of nitrogen to push the yield for your rainfall. And
put that N down however you like, whether it's anhydrous in the fall or spring or top dressing later on.
Yeah, I'm a person that appreciates anhydrous. I like spring applications, especially my no-till fields. I just don't like having those tracks through the winter for rain to sort of channel. But spring applied, or nitrogen. We have producers that'll work in urea, or Super U or different nitrogen products, ammonium nitrate if you can find it. But just realize you have the potential for volatilization if you just leave urea laying on top. So if you're no-tilling, you got to time those rains a little better. If you're working your ground, well, you can incorporate the urea. So,
or you can side dress liquid in.
You can. Split applications are always a good idea if you've got the time and equipment to do that. Personally, with Milo, I do a spring application pre-plant, and it's the full amount, and get along just fine with it.
And back on the other fertility, any special macros that grain sorghum is? I can't think of any that sulfur becomes a big issue in wheat and corn.
Yeah, I'm not a micronutrient expert for sure. I haven't found a benefit as of yet to adding any of the micros. I mean, we do the standard soil test and just follow the university recommendations is what we've been doing.
All right. And then your herbicide, it's pretty well laid out.
You're a grain farmer when we're doing this now, so you want to keep the weeds controlled. Weeds will take your yield away, really quick. We have a lot of the cattle producers that are going to graze Milo. They do this the first year, and then they ask the question, well, why don't we incorporate some other green plants in there, some protein sources? Well, Milo is very hard to overseed a cover into a companion crop because there's so much light interception. Milo shades the ground out very well.
Those nice leaves it has.
All those leaves. And that's a benefit to weed control, but early on we have to have early season weed control. And a typical atrazine, metolachlor combination really works well to help protect that plant in those first few weeks of life when weeds can take it if we don't control it.
Let's say I really wanted to harvest that grain. So I harvest that grain. Can I graze them afterwards then?
So it's common to graze Milo stalks after a grain harvest, just like grazing corn stubble.
Yeah.
But realize the energy's gone because you took the grain away.
Okay.
And so your carrying capacity is much reduced. But there's some good to be had. Milo's interesting when you compare it to corn. Corn is a plant that dies. Okay, it grows through its cycle, and corn will dry down and it will die. Milo is killed. The frost finally kills Milo. So it's green, it's growing, it's full of juice, it's full of sugars and sap, fluids, and frost kills it. So you can go into the winter into a Milo field and take a pair of pliers out of your pocket and squeeze a Milo stalk and squeeze juice out. So there's carbs, there's sugars in that liquid in that Milo stalk. And so even after grain harvest, cattle can go in on some fresh combined Milo and get a lot of good out of that.
But now, when frost kills, you need to leave cattle off a few weeks, don't we?
I tell producers that you can graze Milo any time of the year except for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so prussic acid is always a concern. When we look at fall frost, so that middle October to 1st of November, that 2 weeks in there is a time you don't want to be on a Milo field. The tissue damage from frost causes prussic acid formation, which is very similar, I'm told, to like cyanide poisoning, and it will kill cattle quickly. But it volatilizes and it leaves the plant. It will move away. But we need a couple of weeks time for that to occur, and then it's safe to graze all winter long. So we graze Milo green, dough stage. You can utilize it during summer slump when your fescue pastures aren't performing so well.
So we can start August then.
You can. I say you can graze Milo any month, any time of the year except for those 2 weeks at fall frost.
Because your son William had an idea. I thought it was a great idea. Let's save our pastures, them stockpile in August, September, October, and graze our grain sorghum.
Right.
And then turn them loose in the winter on their stockpiled.
Absolutely. So we've started doing some of that where we plant Milo this time of the year, and we're going to actually have more than we need for winter. So it's going to give us opportunity to graze some green during the summer. So we hit summer slump, or we want to stay off of some pastures, and we do some August nitrogen on for stockpiling, and we need somewhere to go with cattle. Yeah, we can graze some Milo green. The interesting thing about grazing green Milo is it regrows. You can have Milo that's in the dough stage. You can graze it to the ground, and cattle will eat it to the dirt.
When it's in the dough stage.
When it's in the dough stage, they take the whole plant all the way to the
18
dirt.
inches above. And
you get off of that, it'll grow back. You can actually get a second graze off of that before fall frost. The growing point for milo stays below ground. See, corn, the growing point comes up above the soil surface, and when cattle graze that off, it doesn't grow back. But with milo, that growing point stays below soil level, and it'll grow back.
Now, are you worried about, in drought, nitrate poisoning?
So I've got producers in Montgomery County that have grazed milo every winter since 1996. This is nothing new. Now, this is new for a lot of people just now hearing about this, but I've got producers who've been doing this for 30 years, and we've yet to have a founder issue. We've yet to have a nitrate poisoning issue. I would use some caution in my nitrogen applications. Don't go crazy. Don't overdo it.
120 is still okay.
I say 120 is a minimum, and I would top out at 140, 150. If I had a real high yield environment, that'd be fine. But we know that nitrates will accumulate higher in the lower portions of the stalk. It works to our advantage that in the wintertime, cattle, they don't eat that bottom 18 inches of the stalk. So it's kind of like cutting silage, where you kind of chop a little higher if you're in drought conditions and you're worried about nitrate accumulations. So the cattle are just automatically leaving that portion behind. We didn't over-fertilize to begin with. So far, so good. No issues.
All right. So your publication walks us through all of that.
Yep, guide sheet G2079, strip grazing milo is a low-cost winter forage. Absolutely, we try to cover some of the benefits and the things to think about. It's a good introduction. It gets your appetite stirred up, so you'll give me a phone call.
Now, how do they get this publication?
So this publication is hot off the press. It's not even out yet, but on the extension website would be the best place to go search this. So if you go to extension.missouri.edu on your browser, and then there will be a search box, and you can just search for Milo. In fact, if you just search Milo, you're going to find several articles and stories about this whole grazing situation.
And you have your one on grazing, but is there also just a MU guide just on milo production? If you've never produced it, maybe you want to read some more about it.
Yes, you'll find when you go to that search box and type in milo, the majority of the articles are going to be about utilizing it through grazing. That's kind of the hot topic right now. But you'll find some production guides in there as well.
Good. Mm-hmm. All right, because this is might be new for some folks.
Absolutely.
To plant this.
Well, it's very novel. It's a very novel take on feeding cattle. So.
And the nice thing, if the cattle prices tank and grain sorghum goes up, which probably doesn't going to happen, you can always harvest it for grain.
That's right. And I see producers that plant milo for grazing, and then at harvest time, the prices per bushel are just so high that they just can't stand it, and they bring the combine in the field. And when they finish, I go to them. They tell me about this after the fact, and I say, well, you realize that based on the MU Extension Ag Econ crop management budget, okay, if you look at all the expenses for producing milo, that 40% of the total production cost is combine, trucking, grain storage, transfer. So yes, you went to a higher price and you harvested that bushel, but you increased your expenses by another 40%. So we stopped spending money on milo when we plant it and put the herbicide down.
Right.
So 60% of normal production expense is all that you're going to have in this. We're going to let the cattle be the harvesters. It's a beautiful thing. They got mouths, they got feet. Let's let them go to it.
And they put those nutrients back into a better form even.
Recycling it goes through that rumen, comes out the other end. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Stays on the farm. it's a good thing, and we're learning more all the time, looking at the benefits of. So cover crops are great for our lands, right? But now we've got research going on in multiple states where we're trying to evaluate the value of the cover crop going through the rumen and then coming back out on the ground. How does that activate, and how does that do what it does?
See, you could have a nice cover crop, graze that up until now,
right?
And then no-till milo right into it.
Yes.
And then start grazing again in August.
Yes. It's very interesting. There's a lot of potential here. One of the things, so the work that I've done the last several years has been just a fall calving cow-calf herd getting through the winter. And we can take that single largest expense of a cow-calf operator and we can chop that in half. Okay, you're going to feed over $1 a day per cow in hay. I'm going to feed 50 cents or less per day per cow in milo cost. So we're going to chop that in half. All right, but now I want to move into, you brought it up earlier, the stockers, or conditioning cattle for the feedlot, that sort of thing. What kind of value can we add to our milo when we're pushing that to muscle on a frame? So I think there's some good opportunities to do some work there as well.
Yes. One of our farmer friends who direct sells to the public, some of his customers want a no corn, no soy product because of the GMO contamination. You could have it right here, couldn't you?
Marketing, I mean, there's as many avenues to market a product, as there are people to purchase it. So Milo has remained a non-GMO crop. If that is of value to you, I mean, there's an option there. You got a high dense energy grain crop that is going to be non-GMO. My focus honestly has just been on cost of production,
right?
And it just works in our favor that Milo, as opposed to corn, is a better material for direct grazing.
Okay.
Well, let's compare some things. Everybody has heard that Milo is difficult to digest, for example, and you got to process it.
The seed,
the grain. When we harvest grain, sorghum, that product has to be ground before you can feed it to hogs or chickens or what have you, so it can be digested. Well, that works to our advantage. Corn, if we were grazing corn, that material is so easily digested that it would be easy to overload the rumen and get too many carbs going too fast, right? And our livestock animal science people can explain this much better than I. But it is the fact that Milo is a little slower to break down in the rumen that works to our advantage. This is why we don't see the acidosis issues. This is why we don't see the overeating issues in Milo that you would have to be concerned about in corn. The other thing is just the physical height of Milo. You don't think about it, but we noticed it with the sheep and goats. Cattle will walk through Milo and not be excited about it, and they'll just wander the entire field if you let them. A sheep or a goat will not do that. They stay on the outside edges. And so just observations are that the sheep, when they walk into a Milo field, they're blind. They can't see. The Milo's taller than they are. So they're not able to see predators, perhaps. Where a cow can walk into Milo and she can just look over the top of the grain and she sees all of her surroundings. And so that got us to thinking about when cattle get into a cornfield, if cattle ever get into a cornfield, you got to have some time for them to calm down. They get excited. And I wonder how much of that is about not being able to see.
You're about like a sheep in a Milo field then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of nice. We're looking for a crop to stand all through the winter. So the Milo does a little better job of that than the corn does. I think the grain of Milo is easier for a cow to get into her mouth than that ear of corn that's dried down. There's just a few things about that I think give Milo the advantage over corn.
And it's pretty resilient out there, the grain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it weathers well. There've been some forage and grain tests done about that have showing that there's very little degradation in feed quality through the winter, right?
Of the leaf and the grain,
right?
So that's great. It's just as good in November as it is in March as it is in November.
Exactly.
And no telling how good it is in September
Right.
and October.
Right.
So, all right. Well, Rusty, anything you want to conclude with?
No, just that sometimes some of the best ideas are some things you've never heard of and never tried before. I would encourage producers with a cow herd to consider a small patch of Milo. Don't try to go from zero to a full winter's supply. Just grow yourself 30, 45 days worth, right? I'm telling you, you're going to get 400 cow days to the acre if you can pull off 120 bushel yield. So your herd size, do the math. Maybe you need 5 acres to get you through a month. Maybe you need a couple acres to get you a month. Try it, enjoy that savings, make your mistakes on a small area, and then the next year you'll be ready to go bigger.
Because you had a producer try it this year on a big scale.
You could say that. I had a producer in Southwest Missouri. The first year he did that was this year, and he has a 600 head cow herd that he wintered on this, and he absolutely loved it. He went from 0 Milo graze to 115 acres, and he did the math and came out with the hay savings that he felt that he had, and with the hay prices in his area. Yeah, he saved somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000 in feed expense on that herd this winter.
And that Milo cost him what, $25,000 to put in?
Right. So the hay savings was about $140,000.
Okay.
So after we discount the cost of production of the Milo, I'm saying he put $90,000 to $100,000 in his pocket.
Oh,
that was $100,000 he did not spend. Okay, and even bigger than that was the cost he would have had. He would have had to sell cows, and when he was faced with being forced to reduce the herd for no other reason than no feed available, and when you do that, you lose genetics, right? And now you've got to start over. You got to build those genetics back. So there's an expense there
when cattle prices are high.
Yep. So there's that. There's a pound and there's a price per pound expense. But then there's the time investment in cultivating up the genetics, the selections that you want, that sort of thing. So he made savings beyond just dollars this year, and he did not have to sell any cattle.
That's great. Well, that's all that we have today, and we can talk for another hour or two on this. But remember, it's publication what number?
G2079. And you can just search the extension website for strip grazing Milo or Milo, and this will come up. I will throw out my phone number.
Yes.
The extension office is 573-564-3733. Give us a call, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it.
Or your email, too.
Yep. Email me at leerw@missouri.edu.
All right.
Spell out Missouri. Don't abbreviate it, and it's LEERW.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Rusty. And this is it for Tim's Take on a very exciting and hot topic.
You bet.
We'll see you next time.